All right, Bernie, I'm going to kick off this episode of Cardinal Territory, episode 65, for those of you keeping score at home, with a question for you. Bernie, do you know what the phrase FOMO means?
Uh, I should, but I don't.
It's a very online, younger generation. I actually am just now becoming familiar with this. It stands for fear of missing out. And I didn't have that when I did not go to Cleveland. This has been a scheduled off series for me since we scheduled out our first half schedule. So there was never a reality where I was going to Cleveland. And now I really wish I did go, because that series, the Cardinals sweep the Guardians over the weekend, was some of the most fun baseball we've seen from this team. And now I have missed out, and I fear it, and I'm jealous. I wish I was there. What a fun weekend for the Cardinals, don't you think?
Yeah, and gosh, I don't even know where to start. I'm going to ask you a question. Maybe after I throw a few things out there, I want to get your opinion on something. But this series was, I know it sounds kind of crazy to say it was extraordinary, because we're talking about the end of June and it's the Guardians, even though when the Cardinals went in there, the Guardians had a winning record, and they're certainly a respectable team and they pitch well. But the Cardinals go in there and, they not only get the sweep, but you have Sonny Gray, basically one pitch away from a perfect game on Friday. On Saturday, Miles Michaelis gets beat up. It's okay. It happens. But they're down by 5 runs. They come back and win 9-6. And then Sunday, they get a lot of guys in the lineup doing this, doing that, doing this, doing that. They beat up on the Guardians pitching again, and they win in a blowout, another shutout. So there's 2 shutouts in the series. The Cardinals scored 21 runs in the 3 games. They had their biggest comeback of the season. And the Guardians scored in one inning of the entire series. That was the 6th that they dropped on Michaelis. So the Cardinals shut them out 26 of the 27 innings. And if you don't mind me looking at my notes here, because I just think this stuff is crazy. So you have Gray and Libby and Matz and Maton and Helsley and Swanson and Romero, O'Brien and King. So that's 9 pitchers, 9 of the 10 pitchers that they use, Miles being the other one. Those 9 pitchers, 26 shutout innings, and allowed only 6 hits in wow. 26 shutout. Think about that. That is insane. Now, I know Libby walked some today. They had a few walks in there. 26 innings of scoreless pitching, but they faced 84 batters, and they allowed 6 hits. I mean, this is just like crazy stuff, right? You don't see this happening. And the offense was very, very good. So here's my question. I had to put all that on the table for you to give you more to think about. Was this the most dominant performance in a series by the Cardinals this season?
It sure was, and that's why I'm pretty bummed I wasn't there. So they sweep the Guardians. I've lost track of how many times the Cardinals have swept a team, which is a good thing. They improved to a season-best 9 games over 500. Sonny Gray on Friday, 9 innings, 11 strikeouts, 0 earned runs, 89 pitches. Like you said, 1 pitch away from a perfect game. That would have ended me, Bernie. If I would have missed a perfect game, I would have never recovered from that. For selfish reasons, I was a little relieved, but still, when I was watching it, I was like, wow, if he didn't shake off Pedro, that 1 pitch to Nolan Jones, we're watching history tonight. Saturday, Cardinals erased their largest deficit, biggest comeback win of the season. And then today, Sunday, Matthew Libby goes 6 shutty, and you're feeling really good about the offense, because if it's not Alec Burleson, it's Nolan Gorman, it's Victor Scott leaving the yard. We said he was trending in the right direction. Your stats say it all, though. 1 inning out of 27, the Guardians scored. The Cardinals, just after a really flat performance the last 2 games against the Cubs, burst onto the scene. They did it without Jordan Walker. Lars Nootbaar unavailable today. Alec Burleson unavailable today. It just doesn't matter who's in the lineup right now. No Ivan Herrera, no problems, I guess, because this was your word, Bernie, pure domination from the Cardinals, and it really puts them in a great position ahead of 6 key division games heading up against the Pirates and the Cubs again.
And what I liked about the sweep, just the nature of the sweep, and we already mentioned all the other stuff, but I think this series personified the very best qualities of the 2025 Cardinals, and we've already covered the pitching part, because I think their rotation's very underrated. And I think the bullpen's since late April has been very, very on point. Even with Helsley struggling by his standards. So their run prevention has been in really good shape all along. But there's two things I think the Cardinals pride themselves in, effort, of course, and never giving up and battling back and just never getting demoralized, just keep fighting. So they were able to do that Saturday. That was impressive. That was really impressive. The Guardians have a good club and they have a good pitching staff. And for them to come back, roar back after being down 5-1 or 6-1, sorry, that was impressive. The other thing, the Cardinals always like to say, there've been quotes in your pieces recently and throughout the season. Everybody contributes 1 through 9. Everybody contributes. Everybody on this team contributes. So I just did a really quick thing, no big deal. 12 different Cardinals had hits in this series. 9 different Cardinals drove in at least a run, and 6 hit a home run. And what I like about the home run thing, it's 6 different guys.
Mm-hmm.
There's nobody hit 2. They all hit 1 each, right? Now, so that stat right there just backs up what they say. This is a complete team. So if I don't do it, someone else is going to do it. Someone else is going to step forward. It's a full team. Everybody contributes. That's how we have to win. And I think so. When you look at the comeback, and then you look at the incredible contribution made throughout, up and down the lineup and the bench. Even Hampson was in the middle of producing some runs. Right. That was about as good of a team effort as you've seen all season in a series, especially with 9 of your pitchers combining for 26 shutout innings. I mean, that is team baseball right there, right?
Yeah, and I'm having a hard time. I watched all 3 games from home. Like I said, it is a remote weekend for me. And I had a hard time choosing which game I liked the most. On Friday, I watched the game with Cardinal Spanish broadcaster Polo Asensio. And we were, just hanging out, talking, had the game on in the background. And I look up and I say, how is it the 5th inning already? I looked at Sonny Gray's pitch count and I said, we're watching something here. That was just really fun to watch and take in as a fan of the game. You just don't see pitchers pitch like that anymore. I mean, it was his longest start in almost a decade. And what I really liked about that was post-game interview on Apple, Sonny grabs Pedro and says, "You're doing this with me." And that means so much to a young catcher who's growing in his career. This is now the 2nd complete game that Pedro Pages has caught this year. So for a veteran guy like Sonny Gray to say, no, my catcher's going to come do this interview with me because we did this together. I mean, that was, I thought, a really, really sweet moment from Sonny Gray. And then I loved Saturday. I love Saturday too. So Daniel Guerrero from the Post-Dispatch, he had game coverage in Cleveland. And a little beat writer inside joke is every time Daniel Guerrero has the game story, it is the most unhinged, stupid baseball game you can imagine. And we laugh because he's always like, it's always me. It's always me in the 8th inning, and they've done this ridiculous comeback, and I have to rewrite everything. It's always me. So when the Cardinals went out 6-1, I texted our little group chat with Daniel and Lynn Worthy, the columnist for the Post-Dispatch, and I said, well, the good news about this is that Daniel has the gamer, so the Cardinals are going to win like 7-6 or something. And then immediately they started scoring again. And I was like, sorry, Daniel, this is who you are. So maybe Cardinals fans can hope that Daniel gets a little more game coverage lately, because it usually means good things for them. I don't know which game I like the most, but I think you're spot on, Bernie, in talking about the resiliency of this club, that they win in different ways. Everybody's contributing as we head into July, which is a crazy thing to think about. All of a sudden, these Cardinals are looking more and more like contenders. So we'll get into that, because I know that you and I have a lot of thoughts about how the National League is shaping up. First, a quick message from HelloFresh.
People liked this last time, so we're going to do it again. Read one of the fantastic, unique, creative dishes on HelloFresh. Creamy Alfredo truffle cavatappi pasta?
Cavatappi, maybe? But I'll just go with the Indian-inspired chicken paired with turmeric rice. That sounds awesome. Everything about this is delicious, fresh, comes in a little bag, and I like to cook, so I like to chop up the ingredients. I like to throw stuff in the pan, mix it up. It makes me feel like I'm doing something, Scott, and they always come out amazing.
Yes, you can be a star at home with America's #1 meal kit. Make your summer enjoyable and delicious by signing up for HelloFresh at HelloFresh.com/FT10FM and get 10 free meals with a free item for life. That's HelloFresh.com/FT10FM for 10 free meals and a free item in every box. 1 per box with an active subscription. Free meals are applied as a discount on the first box. New subscribers only. Varies by plan.
All right. So because of the Roku game, the Cardinals are the first game done today. So as we're looking at the scoreboard, we're recording this right before 4 o'clock Central Time. The Brewers are tied with the Rockies in the bottom of the ninth, 2 apiece. The Cubs, where are you? The Cubs were shut out by the Astros today, 2-0. And let's not even get into the National League wildcard picture. Here's where the standings are right now. If play paused today, now remember some of these games have not been completed yet. The Cardinals sit 2.5 games out of first place in the National League Central, just behind the Brewers, who are a game and a half out. The Reds fall to 5 games back from the first place Cubs. They're 49-35. You go to the wild card right now. Again, some of those West Coast games have not yet wrapped up. Let's see. Your division leaders right now, the Dodgers, the Cubs, the Phillies. Your wild card teams, the Brewers, the Mets, and what's that? Oh, that's the Cardinals, the number 6 spot in the National League wild card standings. So the playoff picture is looking quite favorable all of a sudden, Bernie. And as we enter everyone's favorite month of the season, I'm just kidding. July is my least favorite month. And the trade deadline comes into play. John Mozeliak is going to get his wish. He is going to have some very difficult decisions to make ahead of the trade deadline. Bernie, do you think that this Cardinals team is worth investing in to make a push to be contenders in the second half? And if so, to what degree?
Well, if they continue to do what they've done, and that even includes losing, that even includes looking bad for a while, but they always get back on track. They're very resilient, but and that's one of their best traits, and that's also very indicative. When I was talking about this series representing some of their best qualities, the one thing I didn't mention is that, they got bushwhacked the last 2 games by the Cubs. The Cardinals should have won the series, and they couldn't score a run in the final 2 games. And it was a really flat note to go out on. So you always wonder, I know you and I have talked about this. Well, oh boy, how are they going to respond to this? How are they going to respond to this? That's kind of disappointing. I know it's okay to get a split, but really, when you win the first 2, you got to win one of the last 2 games. That's the way I kind of see it. Okay, so how are they going to respond? What's going to happen? Are they going to be down in the mouth when they go to Cleveland? No, they're going to go in there and just rip the Guardians apart. And that's what the Cardinals do. They always respond. So I am answering your question, but I kind of want to set that background. The one thing about the Cardinals is they'll fall down, they get kicked around, they get hit in the mouth. It looks like they're disheveled. It looks like maybe they're demoralized. And I used to kind of always wonder, is this just a sign that everything's turning on them now? They're not, maybe they're not going to play that way. No, you just wait. It's okay. They'll come back. They'll do what they do. They just like they did in Cleveland after losing 2 in a row in lopsided fashion to the Cubs, right? They got on the plane, went to Cleveland, pardon my French, and kicked the Guardians' asses, right? That's what the Cardinals do. So my point is, between now and the deadline time, there will be a stretch where the Cardinals look human, or they look below average, or they look ugly. There will be a stretch like that. But in the past, this season, myself and I think a lot of people would have thought, well, see, maybe that's who they really are. So be careful. You don't have to do much at the deadline because maybe they're really not that good. Nope. They're going to have a bad stretch between now and July 31st. But what's going to happen is they're going to get up and get back on the winning track and just basically shut everybody up again. So, yeah, I think this team is worthy of investment. Now, the tough thing that I don't have an answer for is how big do they go? I wouldn't think they would go big, but the more they win, is this like a sliding scale? The more they win and the more that they start strengthening their position in the central race and the wild card race, does that mean they would get outside of their comfort zone, and how much? I still would expect a rather conservative approach, but I could be wrong about that depending on how they play. If they keep rolling up series wins, I think that almost would require a bigger play at the trade deadline. Nothing crazy, but just a bigger play. What do you think?
I'm with you, Bernie. I don't think that there's going to be a big blockbuster move, right? Mainly because in seasons prior where the Cardinals had every reason to go all in, are you thinking 2022? They didn't. Look, if Albert Pujols and Yadier Molina's last years isn't going to get the DeWitts to push the chips in, nothing is. But this year in particular, I am okay if the Cardinals take a conservative approach into the trade deadline because they are balancing that fine line of transitioning to 2026. And the last thing you want to do, because the Cardinals have been needing to do this for so long, is blow up the future for the sake of a win now maybe mentality. And would I be saying things differently if it was clear that the Cardinals were, far and above the best team in the NL Central? Maybe, but look, you can't discount the Cubs or the Brewers and even the Reds to some extent. And the National League in general is just so much more competitive than the NL West. Think about it. You have the Dodgers, the Padres, the Giants, all NL West contenders. The Mets and the Phillies are going to go at it. I know the Phillies are going through it right now, but that goes back to your point, Bernie. Good teams have bad weeks. And then you look around, they'll go back to the wild card standings. Yeah, you see the Cardinals right in the middle of it, but it's no guarantee. Now, do they deserve all of the praise for being 9 games over 500 as we head into July, just 1 day left in June? Yes. Do I think that they're a contending team? Yes. But I also do not think the Cardinals should deviate from their plans of 2026 and beyond. This team, this group right here, this core has already shown they can win and they can compete. Yes, you want to add because, teams like the Cubs are going to be super aggressive in starting pitching. The Brewers always seem to do something at the trade deadline. The Dodgers are going to go spend $500 million. We know this. Okay. So in order to keep up with your opponents, yeah, you should be buying, but not to the degree where you're tearing down the roster and making these lucrative deals that are going to harm you long-term. I think that's the wrong approach for the Cardinals to take. Dare I say this would be the only season where I'm okay with St. Louis being semi-holders. We talked about this before. Maybe you trade someone like Eric Fetty because there's always a demand for pitching and open the door for Michael McGreevy. Maybe you go out and you buy a veteran and you add a rental reliever because I feel like the Cardinals do that every year. And if you're looking at one area, the bullpen could probably use it. Some experience never hurts for teams trying to make a postseason push. But this core, if the primary purpose of the season was to figure out if this core can compete and what the future looks like, we're figuring that out already. The future looks pretty good if this Cardinals core can keep competing in the way that they have throughout the first half of the season. They don't need to mess this up any more really than a couple of simple adds. However, the competitive level of the National League makes that a little bit more difficult. So I'm torn, and we'll see coming into the All-Star break what the trade deadline starts to look like. We treat July 1st as the start of the deadline because it's July, but as we know, especially in the world of Mr. Mozeliak, things don't really come into form until the last week of the month. It is certainly a very complex decision, and I can argue both sides of it.
Yeah, definitely. The one thing that I would maybe draw the line on is if they, first of all, these players, the dugout staff, Ali and all the coaches and the players, all of them, they've done everything that's been asked of them. They have exceeded expectations. They've exceeded projections. They overcame the doom and gloom forecast. They overcame the fact that Busch Stadium isn't rocking like it has rocked in the past. I mean, we can talk about reasons, but the bottom line is they're 13th in average tickets sold per home game. Cardinals haven't been in that territory in a long, long time. So they're not even doing it with like a full house of support. So but they don't care. They just keep playing, winning, fighting, winning, coming back. They cannot abandon this team. They can't strand this team. That's why I think if John Mozeliak, for example, I agree with you. Even though Swanson and O'Brien, some of those kids have actually pitched really well. They need to have as much help as they can possibly get in the bullpen. And I would say, instead of getting a reliever who can help you, well, he'll help us. He'll give a step. Go get a reliever that actually makes you stronger. Now, again, that's not easy to quantify. It's like, well, what would you have to give up for that? I don't know. But I think that if they're going to make any move, don't make just some kind of like nip and tuck type move. Don't do that. Just do something that really will matter. I'm like you, Katie. I'm living in the real world here. I don't expect the Cardinals to start trading young talent to like this maniacal all-in approach. They're not going to do that, nor should they. But don't just go make a move just because you can bring in a reliever and say, oh, see, we got a reliever. Try to make a difference. Try to make a difference. And that's really hard for me to define, and I know that. So it's easy for me to say, make a move that makes a difference. It's easy to say, but that's kind of what I'm looking at. Make the move count. That's all, because I think these players and that manager and those coaches absolutely deserve backup, right?
Yeah, and I think that you're sending a huge message to morale for that clubhouse too. If you go in there and the Cardinals are firmly in the playoff picture around July 31st and you take away from that core, What are you communicating to them? Hey, thanks for succeeding all of the expectations we set, for going above and beyond in this very weird season that we gave you. We are going to take you out of contention by either selling or not adding to an extent that gives you a chance. And I'm not saying blow it up. I'm not saying go out and make all these moves that impact your future. But if you want to communicate to this next core of Cardinals talent that you believe in them and reward them for their play this year, because virtually nobody had the Cardinals almost 10 games over 500 right now, right, Bernie? I know you and I certainly did not.
No.
Then you communicate and you go make an impact move. That's the right way to put it. I mean, Phil Maton ended up being a huge impact move. And at the time we were like, you know what, this is a good signing. You know, he's a veteran, $2.5 million. He fits like the Cardinal persona. I didn't have him being arguably their most reliable reliever all season. But if you get someone like a Phil Maton in terms of someone who has gone out there and done it before, go get a veteran who has done it before, who has postseason experience, who isn't going to cost you more in a 2026. I don't even know who's out there. We don't know what the bullpen market looks like. It's far too early. But if there is a reliever who fits this criteria of someone who has postseason experience, someone who has done it before, a veteran, and is preferably not under contract after 2025. That's the kind of bullpen arm I think the Cardinals should target. But really, it's about making sure this core feels like they have been put in a position to succeed, because you could argue that they have not, and I would actually leave that argument. But they have done a commendable job, as you said, players and staff alike, in making this organization relevant, despite almost everything suggesting that they wouldn't be. So
yeah, and the thing of it is, and this even bakes in a couple of pretty bad stretches, right? And we know they had that one blazing stretch where they won 14 out of 3. But I was looking at this today, and this just to solidify the point each one of us are making here. If you go back to April 30th, that's the day that they won the doubleheader in Cincinnati, right? The Cardinals are 35-21. They're 14 games over 500. And that even includes a very yucky stretch where they were really bad, right? At one point, they lost 11 out of 16. And they still, going in today, that record, well, now it's 35-21. That's going to be, when I look it up in the morning, that's going to be at worst like second in the National League, maybe third. It's going to be a top 3 league record in the league, and it might probably be a top 5 record in Major League Baseball. That's going back to the end of April. So the Cardinals have had 2 months of playing really, really well. And when they go down in the valley, they get right back up and they start winning again. So that's a team that shows you that they have got, they absolutely have got, whatever you want to call it, intangibles plus talent, character, competitive character, great chemistry, just this great mindset, great attitude. They've got what it takes to stay in this race. So you really need to make a move accordingly. You're not in the same, you're not on the same dock as the Mets or the Dodgers or the Yankees, or who else can we put in there? Well, the Phillies, the Cubs. You're not in the same dock. You're not. Your yacht isn't as big as their yacht. Okay. So they're going to go all in. They're going to go crazy. They're going to lose their minds. And there's going to be some other teams that will do that too. The Cardinals are in a different boat slip. They don't have the big yacht. They don't have the Jeff Bezos yacht, right? They got something a lot smaller, but it's still a good yacht, right? They got to do something, right? Based on their expectations, they've got to do what they can without going bananas. They got to do whatever they can to make this team stronger for the stretch. They just have to. This team has proven it's worth that investment. And I say that even if they go into Chicago and lose all 3 games, because there's a lot of teams that are going to Chicago and lose all 3 games. Look at how the Mets are playing, for gosh sake, $338 million payroll. I mean, look, they're having players meetings. They're all going, they're panicking. That's the Mets, right? So one thing I'm not going to do anymore is overreact to when the Cardinals disappoint us. I just got to keep it steady, because this is happening all over baseball.
That's a great point. I think the Cardinals have earned that. Earlier in the season, April, May, I think fans had every reason to be like, what the heck is this? We knew they were going to be bad, right? But your favorite team, whether you're a fan of the Red Sox or the Rockies, your favorite team is going to have a brutal stretch, even the best teams. The Phillies early in June went through one. The Mets are going through it right now. The Dodgers went through it. Yes, even the Dodgers went through it. Every team is guaranteed in this 162-game season to have multiple weeks of baseball where they aren't playing well. It's what you do when you are playing well and those games in between that really matter. So the Cardinals slide. Yes, of course, you want them to do well against the Cubs. I get it. Cardinals have a couple of slip-ups before the trade deadline. I don't think any of this changes. I think that the overwhelming evidence of this season so far of the first half suggests that the Cardinals are a good team rather than an average to mediocre team. And as we have all this focus on the trade deadline, I know there'll be plenty on John Mozeliak. He is the one making the decisions, but there should be some focus on ownership too. If they're going to give him some of the financial flexibility in what will be a recession year for the team, there might be a chance where Mo can only do so much. And obviously he's not going to go out and say that. He has bosses too, but a lot of this pressure on the deadline also goes to ownership. So
right. I agree.
We'll see how the next 31 days go. We'll spin it forward to the next week. First, though, quick message from Spot and Tango.
Well, if you're a normal human, you can't speak English to your pup. But what you can do to understand what they love, which is Spot and Tango on kibble, is to see how they react when you put the unkibble in the bowl. And my pup, Penelope, loves it. So does Bella.
Well, Bella speaks Spanish, so she says, muy bien. I love this stuff.
She says, wow, Dad, thanks for creating a custom plan based on my age, weight, breed, and activity level. You nailed it. And also, it's made with 100% whole fresh ingredients like real USDA meats, fruits, and veggies, but it's 40% less expensive than frozen food. So upgrade your pet's bowl with Spot and Tango Unkibble. And for a limited time, go to spotandtango.com/foul and use code FOUL for 50% off your first order. That's spotandtango.com/foul, code FOUL to get 50% off your first order.
All right, on the docket in the next week, 3 games against the Pirates in Pittsburgh, 3 games at Wrigley Field over 4th of July weekend. The Cardinals will face Paul Skeens on Tuesday. They're probably looking forward to that, though, because they're like the only team in baseball that can make Paul Skeens look human. So I think your probables are for St. Louis, Eric Fetty on Monday, Andre Palante on Tuesday, Sonny Gray on Wednesday, and the Pirates will throw Andrew Heaney, Paul Skeens, and Mitch Keller in that order. We're going to see the Cubs, and either Sonny Gray nor Shohei Imanaga will pitch in that weekend, much to my chagrin, but still should be, honestly, 6 really compelling baseball games as this NL Central starts to heat up. Bernie, what are you looking at?
Well, you got to win the Pirates series. And again, stuff happens in baseball. You can't demand things, but I would think it's reasonable to expect, especially the way they're playing. I mean, the Cardinals are 10-3 in their last 13, 11-4 in their last 15. It's reasonable to expect them to say, listen, fellas, you got to go in there and at least take 2 out of 3. I never demand a sweep. That's stupid. It's just not realistic. Chicago's a different thing. I mean, I would expect the Cubs to win 2 out of 3. I would expect that. That doesn't mean it's going to happen. And that ought to be just an incredible series. And I know it's okay for you and I to look ahead. I don't think the players will look ahead. They're going to love going back to Wrigley Field. A little sour taste in their mouth after the final 2 games here with the Cubs. So this will be a wild week. Can they beat Skeens again? I mean, it isn't a matter of beating Skeens. It's beating the Pirates because Skeens pitches great all the time and they lose games that he starts. So, if they can do that again, chances are they can sweep. I'm not getting greedy, but I think it's certainly within the realm of possibility. And then of course, your hope would be that they would win 2 out of 3 at Wrigley Field. But if they win 1 out of 3 at Wrigley Field, I'm not going to write a column or do a video, calling them frauds. The Cubs are really good. But the Cubs, as we've seen, they are also vulnerable. So they have a superpower type record. I don't know that they're an actual superpower when you look at their record against some of the best teams in baseball. The Cubs have really, really taken advantage of beating up on 7 worst teams in baseball this year. So you can beat the Cubs. And I think the Cardinals learned that. I think they learned that at Busch Stadium, even though they had to settle for a split. So anyway, I'm looking forward to it. This is a fun week of baseball. It really is.
I agree. I'm excited to get to it since I missed 3 of the best games of the season. But you know what? Honestly, I wonder if they're going to let me in the clubhouse because they seem to be playing really good games when I'm not there. Pedro Paz really delivers offensively when I am not there. It's become noticed when I walk in. He's, I homered, you weren't there. So got to fix that. I got to start going to more games. And usually, Bernie, I never miss games, but I don't know. If they keep winning, I might have to. We'll see.
That's why Pages is the starting catcher. He's always prepared. He does his studying, his preparation, his homework. He knows all the numbers. He knows tendencies. See, he's on top of it. By the way, can I just say this real quick? Ali Marmol and Dusty Blake and the pitchers love Pedro Pages. It doesn't mean they hate the other guys, okay? It's just that Pages is next level, right? He really, truly is. But How about that message that Sonny Gray was sending, not only to his catcher, but sending it to whoever was watching?
That was not intentional. That was a veteran doing veteran things right there.
This is our catcher. And again, it's not a backslap at the other two guys. It's not. This is our catcher. He is really important to us. I thought that was a really powerful scene and a very powerful message. So
I'm really glad you brought that up, because that was the whole reason I brought Sonny earlier in the show when I talked about Sonny Gray bringing Pedro in. That was the point that I wanted to get to, and then I forgot to get there.
That's all right.
Having my back, Bertie. That's why we worked so well together.
You know me. I can talk. I can remember things that you hadn't even thought of yet. No, I'm just saying. I always got stuff.
But you have my back. You're a good teammate.
No, I mean I thought that was so profound. Maybe I'm overreacting, but because there's still a lot of discussion about, well, he can't hit, so they got, when Herrera comes back, he's got to be the catcher. No. All due respect to our listeners and viewers, all due respect, you don't get it. You don't get it. This guy is now in a special class of catchers where every pitcher in that room wants him to be behind the plate. Why? He makes them better.
Right.
The other two guys, all due respect, do not make the pitchers better. He does. That's a huge thing.
I think part of the reason there's some skepticism from the fans is because, and we said this before, there's no stat to provide statistical evidence to prove this point. You have to rely on the words of mouth of reporters, which does nothing, despite my best efforts. But when a player goes out and says it and says to the public what they've been saying to their coaches, to teammates, to media, privately, when they do what Sonny Gray did, then all of a sudden fans have something to back up that. I know this is Missouri. It's the show me state. I know you guys got to see it to believe it. But Pedro Pages, his preparation is game-changing, and that's why he's getting so many starts and will continue to do that.
Real quick, I went back last week and did some research. I'm going to update it tomorrow morning, probably put it in one of my columns or something. But I went through each individual Cardinal pitcher and what their ERA was when Pages was their catcher. It's really remarkable. The only guy with a bad ERA, and I'm not trying to make a joke and pile on Miles Michaelis, but even then, it wasn't a horrible ERA. It was over 4 runs a game, and Pages caught Michaelis' start in Fenway Park. He caught another, which was a disaster, and another one. So I'm not blaming Pages for that. But you go down the list, every single pitcher, like their ERAs when they work with this guy, they are phenomenal. And it's like, no, that's not random. That's not a coincidence. That really means something. So they allow, when he's behind the plate, it is a fact, they allow fewer runs per game, period. And it's not by a small margin either. So
you heard it here first, guys. Pedro Pages for president as we go into another fun week ahead for the Cardinals. Bernie, anything special you got going on that you want to plug besides, I have to say, I do this every week because I think more and more people should watch it. Your Tuesday show on KMOX with Ollie Marmol continues to be, I think, one of the best things that St. Louis media does. It's fantastic. Please check it out if you haven't already.
Yeah, and Ollie always wants the questions too. He really wants to be put on the spot about some things. He's really different that way. No, 5 columns a week and 5 videos a week at stlsportscentral.com. Also, I'm on the Randy Carricker Show every Friday morning, 10:30 at STL Sports Central. I'm on the Gas House Gang or the Redbird Rush Hour at KMOX 5 times a week, one of those shows. And I do Seeing Red podcast with Will Leach once a week. We record on Mondays usually. And, of course, I'm with the fabulous Katie Woo a couple times a week right here on Cardinal Territory.
Yeah, fabulous is subjective, but lots of stuff. We know Bernie, he's a content factory up on The Athletic. You'll have a Brendan Donovan feature coming up tomorrow. I don't say this very often, but I'm excited about it. I think it's a really unique opportunity to see Donovan behind the scenes as he kind of grows into a leader and hopeful an all-star candidate for the Cardinals. And then come July 1st, trade deadline overload at The Athletic. No matter who your favorite team is or your favorite beat writer, we will have things for you. And I'll be ramping up the coverage of the MLB draft, which is rapidly approaching. Cardinals have the number 5 pick, so things could get weird. All right, Bernie, it will be a very fun week. Him and I will be here to wrap it all up with you. Thanks as always for watching Cardinal Territory. We'll talk to you from Pittsburgh.